Before we begin, a note for our listeners. This episode includes discussions of sexual assault, rape kits, and the challenges survivors face in seeking justice. If you or someone you know has experienced sexual assault and needs support, help is available. You can call the New Jersey statewide sexual assault hotline at 1-800-601-7200 or connect with local organizations like Younity in Mercer County, whose members share their voices in this episode.
Welcome to Jersey Rules, your front row seat to New Jersey's biggest conversations. Today we're discussing legislation signed into law just this past January to establish a rape kit tracking system in New Jersey. We'll talk about what this means and how it will make sure survivors are never left in the dark about their cases. I want to welcome our exceptional guests today. Joining us is Assemblywoman Reynolds-Jackson, representing the 15th Legislative District and the sponsor of this legislation. We also have Nathalie Nelson, and she is the CEO and president of Younity, formerly Women's Space, and that's a nonprofit dedicated to supporting survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Work includes crisis intervention, advocacy, and housing services. We also have from Younity, Varonda Kendrick, Younity's response team coordinator and domestic violence victims representative. She works directly with survivors and trains law enforcement officers in addressing domestic and sexual violence issues. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. In preparing for today, I saw that each one of you has very strong roots in this community.
Mm-hmm.
And I also just found out you know each other for a long time as well. Tell me a little bit about your background and what brought you to your current positions. You go first, Nathalie.
So I have been with the agency for approximately 12 years. I was always dedicated to volunteering. I started out as the director of HR, and then 3 years ago I became the CEO. I definitely believe in strong values of listening and helping. So once I started working here, I knew that I wanted to stay here for a long time, and I also wanted to make a difference in somebody's lives.
That kind of sounds like me. I'm like mission driven, right? I've grown up in this area. I always tell people my mom lives 2 blocks away from the State House, and here I am, this super advocate for our community. And I think, you know, when you talk about who I am, my family is just a giving family. We've always been a part of that, giving back to the community, whether it was for meals or clothing or trying to help someone find a job, just trying to make someone's life better in whatever aspect that is for them. Not putting my perception on them, but making them feel better where they are. And so I think for me, being a legislator in the State House, it just amplifies the work that we all do together. And so that's why we know one another, because we've been doing this work for a long time on a personal level and on a professional level. So it just makes the work we do, the impact that more, I feel like it's our superpowers that we're able to give back to the community.
Absolutely. Well, I'm also a Trentonian, so I grew up in the area. I've always been a part of a family who also is giving. And having been in my community, my mom always fed the neighbors, always, you know, provided things for them when they needed it. So I saw this growing up, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. And I guess that's a part of my love language, is giving and like being compassionate. So when I started at Younity in 2015 as an advocate, I didn't realize my path was going to lead me to being the coordinator, but working with victim survivors, then it let me see that there's such a need for it. So when the opportunity presented itself in 2022, I was ready, you know, and I felt like this is where I'm supposed to be. So it's just a pleasure to be able to work for an agency who gives back so much and to help victim survivors when they really need it.
Wonderful. And also when you speak about modeling, like how your family made an impact that kind of led you to this space?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's just a part of your DNA, whether in good times or bad times, when you can lean on support services that come out of Younity, it just amplifies knowing the work you're doing and why it's so meaningful. And so I don't think, Nathalie says she's new, but she's really not new, right? She's been here for a while, almost, I want to say like a decade now. So, as we continue to do this work, it changes though, right? And I think that's part of, the growth of Younity, where they are now in their organization. It's just not about women, but it's about everybody and how we can support, everyone in the community.
Exactly. And like I always say, the work that we do is extremely hard. It's extremely difficult. But when you see when someone comes into our agency and after they leave and provide the services, how they overbecome, they're so strong, they're empowered. It's like, this is why we do the job. This is why we don't sleep at night. This is why we're advocating, because it's for those survivors.
Absolutely. And what I find from working directly with the survivors is they're very resilient. They have more strength than they give themselves credit for. So sometimes I walk away feeling empowered because of the things that they say. And they don't see their strength. So it's us as advocates that are presenting this to them, saying, you know what, whatever happened to you, it was never your fault. That you deserve better than this, and we're just here to provide compassionate listening, to provide them with resources, never to tell them what to do, because they already know what to do. They're the experts in their own lives, so they know what's best for them. So it's just us empowering them to see what we see when we walk into the room with them. And sometimes I'm just like in awe of, the strength that they had to even make the step to come forward.
Yeah, that is true. And I agree. I feel like healing is very personal. Everyone processes trauma very differently. And we're just so fortunate that we can provide all of our victim survivors all different options. So if they don't want to do this, they can do that. We're very grateful for that.
It's in their own time.
It's in their own time.
So we're not there saying, here is our resources, call us today. It's when you're ready. And sometimes they will call right away, and sometimes they'll wait. And, I've met with victim survivors who said to me, I've been with Women's Space in the past. I use the services, and they're kind of embarrassed by that. But I'm like, no, we're always here. As many times as you need to call us, we're here. And there's no reason to feel embarrassed by it. We're grateful that you thought enough of us to come back, because if we weren't doing something right, you wouldn't want to come back to us. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
As you can see, we're so passionate. We can
I know.
That's outstanding. And like your sense of gratitude to the people who come to you, right, is something you don't always think of, and also not telling them what they need to do. Like it's different than, how you might perceive what would happen.
Right. And I think that's what leads us to the bill, right? We're talking about the sexual assault, rape kits, the traumas that people have been through. Why do we need this in the first place? And it was because of the stories that we were hearing. It was because we were trying to bring justice for them. But when you are, you go through this forensic exam, that's already traumatic, right? And so to know that I've done my part, and now I want to make sure that it's processed. As a survivor, I want to make sure that the justice system is there to be able to help me. But that wasn't always the case. And that's where this bill came about. It's like, wait a minute now, I went through this horrible experience. I went through this forensic exam, and now I'm looking to track my kit, and it can be lost, it can be misplaced, it can be mishandled. And so I'm almost like I'm re-traumatized again, going through this, trying to seek help, and now, it's not available to me. So that's how the bill came about. We wanted to be able to remove those barriers. Let's put something in place so that we can help survivors and help our justice system get on track so that they too can go after the offenders.
Mm-hmm.
Was there something that brought all this to your attention, like an initial, did somebody come to you, or you're like, I've known about this, it made me so angry, upset?
I served on several committees where we heard from sexual assault survivors. And this was the number one complaint, that they weren't able to track their kids. And so I'm happy that we're at this point now, but sometimes legislation takes a long time. But I think once we started with the bill, getting it through committee, it gained a life of its own. And the advocates, the community, everybody wanted to see this get through. The AG's office was there. They were supportive. They recognized that they had some deficiencies in their department, and they were ready to say, listen, we need to do better by these survivors.
We can actually speak a little bit more about the survivors and before we get into the heart of the legislation. But has there been something, you touched on it, that you've learned from survivors that change how you address, working together, legislation, something that surprised you and how you advocate?
Well, for me, again, it's when I'm working with a survivor, just their resiliency, right? Just the fact that they came forward to report, to go through this forensic exam. And when we're there as advocates, we're explaining to them what's going to happen to them. And then the wonderful forensic nurses come in and explain it to them again. So we're telling them from beginning to end, this is what's about to happen to you. So for them to sit and go through, a full body examination, the conversation alone, having to explain in great detail what happened to them. And for them to decide, I want to get this kit done. I want to make sure that I get justice. When I see that and I see how they want to make sure that this doesn't happen to someone else. Because most times when I'm talking to a survivor, it's not about them. Mm-hmm. It's about making sure someone else doesn't have to experience what they've been through. So every time we talk to a different person, we get a different perspective. And we have a lot of respect for anyone who has come forward, because it's not easy. There's a lot of victim blame and shaming and things that go along with it. And I just say, I always tell them, you are amazing. You are so brave to even be doing this. And, the support that they have from Younity and from the forensic nurses that are there, it helps the process. It helps them to understand, I'm just here to hold your hand. I'm just here, and you can stop at any given time. You don't have to continue if you don't want to. Giving them options and giving them the choice to know what they can do, that's empowering them as well. So it's not like someone saying, you said this happened to you and now you have to do this, because now that's victimization too, right? So now when they were going through the abuse and the assault, their power was being taken from them. So the last thing we want to do is take their power again by telling them what they have to do.
Exactly. And just like Varonda said, I think all survivors are so resilient, and we really need to reinforce the trauma-informed care at all levels. If it's either like policy, if it's direct service, if it's community, education, because it's true. Society thinks that certain survivors look a certain way, that they're young, that they're female, but it's not. They come in all different ages, all different genders. And because of that, some survivors feel like they need to act a certain way for them to believe it, but we shouldn't. We're here to listen to them, and it doesn't matter what they look like, who they are, or where they come from. So that's why it's really important for us, to make sure that we're educating everybody at all levels.
And you touched right on, because we were saying, perception. Is there a perception of a survivor? Yeah. And
it can be anyone. Yeah. And, and sometimes people feel like because a person lives in a certain area, they're more prone to this happening to them. Yes. It's not true. Yeah. Survivors wear all different colors. Yes. They work in all different atmospheres. Mm-hmm. They are all from all different financial backings. Mm-hmm. So a victim is a victim. And I say we as a society have to do better, because no one walks around with something on their sleeve that say I'm a victim. So when we're out and we're having conversations with our friends and our family and we're unknowingly victim blaming, we could be at a restaurant talking about someone a situation that we've been, that we know of, and the person that's serving us or someone in earshot of the table next to us could be a victim. And they'll say, this is why I won't come forward. This is why I won't, because of how everyone talks about it. So we have to make a safe space for people to understand that it's okay to come forward, but it's not okay what happened to you. And I always say we put so much pressure on the victim, but the person who causes harm just goes about their daily business like nothing ever
We
happened.
never blame the perpetrator.
Absolutely.
It's always like, oh, he or she shouldn't have been wearing that.
Yes.
He or she shouldn't have
Yes.
been there. What about the perpetrator?
Yeah. Yeah.
Injustice.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like this legislation is bigger than just this piece. It's about what you said, empowering the survivors. It's about raising the level of the integrity of our justice system. Because, we may be talking about the sexual assault kit today, but we could also talk about other crimes that have been committed. And, it would be great to use this as a best practice to say this is the model. This is how we can take it over into other evidence type situations where, it needs to be tracked. It needs to be dated. It needs to be followed up. It needs to be handled with care. How a survivor should be able to know where their data is. Where is my kit? Where are we at in the process? And I think this legislation does that. It's making sure that we empower the survivors, we keep them connected, and I also think that helps in bringing justice. That's what this is all about, making sure we keep the integrity of these kits so that we can bring justice at the end of the day. And I think that's empowering for the victim to say, I'm speaking up and I'm speaking out and somebody's hearing me. They're hearing me. And that's what we do. That's what advocacy is making sure that you hear my voice, you hear what I'm saying. And now I have the evidence to prove what I'm saying is right, is correct, and I need the justice system to work for me. And I think that's what this does, but I think it does it a lot more for other areas in public safety.
I agree. And I'm so glad and happy about this, but my hope is that we continue. We still have work to be done, and I always want to make sure that, the justice system is always prioritizing our survivors and their well-being.
Absolutely. Yeah, because, it's one thing to have a person come forward and, maybe they're not ready right now. So now they don't have to have something done within 5 years. It's 20 years now, right? They can wait until they're ready. And most times people are like, well, why wouldn't they want to get it done right away? If you haven't been in that situation, that's why you can ask that question. Exactly. There's a lot that a victim has to go through. There's a lot. And sometimes we have victims that we talk to whose family don't even know that they've been through such trauma. So now if you're talking about going to court and you're talking about all this other stuff, they're afraid that people are going to find out what happened to them. Am I going to lose my job, or are people going to treat me differently now that they find out that this has happened to me? So just having legislation that supports them in their time, and that they can find out, where is this? I went to the hospital, the police were involved, but sometimes they didn't know what was happening. Like, what do I do next? So having this tracking system was like music to our ears. Like, this is what should be done, because they deserve to be able to find it. And the way technology is right now, it should be that way.
Exactly.
And for those who aren't familiar with what a safe kit is exactly, can somebody describe it?
Well, the safe kit, it's the forensic examination that is given to a victim survivor of sexual assault. So during this examination, they are meeting with a forensic nurse examiner, and they have to go through a series of things, right? So they have an examination that's being done of their entire body. There's pictures that's being taken. It's very invasive, They have people in the room that they've never seen before looking at their body, and for them it could be embarrassing. They could be in pain from from what happened to them. So not only do they have to get the pictures done, they have to, go through this examination, but they have to have a conversation. So they have to sit, and the nurse has to ask them a series of questions, very detailed, about what happened to them. So they have to go from the beginning to the end, describe the perpetrator. They have to go through all these things. And it's not easy, you know. And at times, victim survivors, they respond differently, right? So some people are able to have the conversation, some people aren't. You know, some people may shut down, and, you know, or the way that the conversation is happening may sound like it's not true because of how their memory is coming in. You know, with trauma, it's just like your brain is going into shutdown mode. It wants to protect you. It doesn't want to relive this thing. So it could be, you know, they're talking about one thing and then they go off on a tangent talking about something else. So forensic nurses understand this. And they give them the opportunity and the time to do what they have to do. So sometimes we can be in an exam, it could take a half hour to 3-4 hours we can be in there, but because they are given enough time to be able to take minutes if they need to, take time to rest, you know. So the exam is very important to get the evidence needed. And after the exam, the nurse, you know, they collect all the specimens and everything, and they have to preserve it to give it to law enforcement. So once the exam is done, the nurse can't leave the room because that holds the integrity of the kit. So they have to go through a series of paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork that they're doing. They have to label each one of the swabs that they've taken. And so it's time sensitive. There's a lot of time involved, but it's necessary, right? And the nurses never complain. They're just doing what they have to do, you know, making their labels and doing everything. And then they close the kit up and they seal it. And until law enforcement comes and get it, you know, the nurse does not leave this box. And if law enforcement can't come pick it up, there's a metal box in the hospital where they can drop it, and only the supervisor of the forensic nurses can get in there to grab this box out.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. And I think it's also very important to mention the confidentiality piece. Like, not everyone has access to that. So only the forensic nurse, law enforcement, crime lab, and the survivors, too.
Does the survivor at that point say, I want this to go forward? I mean, they have now up to 20 years. Do they make a decision then, like,
At that point, they're not really having that conversation. You know, the nurse will explain to them, you know, they can call the prosecutor's office and, you know, or the law enforcement, they may have to go and speak to law enforcement after the exam is done to complete, you know, the other part of it. So then here they have to go again and have this conversation all over again. So at that moment, they're not necessarily saying what they want to do. They're given an opportunity to just get the exam over with, rest, go home, and then, you know, decide from there.
as far as transparency, because there's been reports and articles about how many kits are outstanding, does this address that so that we know, what's outstanding, what's moving ahead, where something is at all times?
Right, and that's where the legislation comes in, where it mandates that they have to do it in a specific period of time. I think that's where this all started from. It was like because survivors were complaining about not having access to it or not knowing where it was just too it was just too randomized, and it was chaos. And so I think that's what the legislation does. It puts things in order. It helps you put parameters around tracking them so that they can have it, so that they can use it for evidence to go after the offenders. That's, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do here. Establish a system of justice.
Yeah, and this way also the survivors know, they're not like, what happened, what's going on, that they know that's like the kit is tracked and something is being done.
And you've worked with survivors who up until this point have been asking that.
Yeah, a lot of times they want to know, what's going to happen next? Where's that going? How do I access it? Who do I talk to? So at the time of the assault, they're really not thinking about a whole lot of stuff besides, I want to get out of here, right? But after it's over, that next day is when all the questions start. So they may call Younity and they may start asking questions about, I had a sexual assault, I was at the hospital, what do I do? You know, they may call law enforcement and ask them these questions, or show up at the police station trying to find out what's going on. Having this tracking system, they don't have to go through that. They don't have to talk to anybody. They don't have to say, I'm a victim of sexual assault. They can just go on their device and find their kit themselves.
I think about that too, because you know it re-traumatizes you, or having to say it over and over and over. But if I'm having the conversation and I'm getting steps, or I'm talking with someone, and I can't leave out the prosecutor's office as well, because they're very helpful in this. We have, I'm biased because I'm in Mercer County, but I love our Mercer County prosecutor's office. I love our law enforcement, because they take this seriously. And this is an intimate battle that you just had over your body, and to know that you have someone, whether it's in the hospital or after, and they call Younity. But now that I've done all of this stuff, like I need to go home so that I can, you know, get the support that I need. But when I'm ready, I know I can go back now and I can track my kid and I can pick up where I left off. That's the empowering part. That's where the survivor is able to take control of her situation or his situation and say, I'm ready to move forward now. And I think that's the courage that we're looking to make sure we give everyone, the empowerment of it all.
Yeah. And I think with the tracking system, it also improves accountability with the evidence chain. And I think with that, that's also reassuring for our survivors too.
Yeah, accountability is definitely key, you know, because they want to know that they matter.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, they went through this horrific thing, but they see me. And they're going to do something about it.
You know, when I think about the women, the people that come through Younity doors, I felt a sense of empowerment. I felt like I took some of the weight off of your shoulders, because it's everything that we talk about. It's everything that we say, speak up and speak out. And we did it, and we were able to get 21 people to say yes, another 41 people to say yes, and then we were able to get one more person to say yes. And so we can't do this in a bubble by ourselves, but it was so, it's like a volcanic eruption that's happening. I'm doing cartwheels and handstands because it's like finally somebody listened and they believe. And so I feel that's how survivors feel, like somebody believed me. I wasn't telling a lie. This is the truth. This is what happens, and I have the evidence now. So is that sense of relief, of pride, to say that we've done this collectively together, because it's just not me, but I feel like I have thousands of people behind me supporting me through this. And so, you know, this is what motivates you to say, what else can we do? What else is down the pike? And so I look forward to the next piece of legislation to continue to empower our community. Yeah. So I want to thank you for having us on the podcast today, for giving us a voice and a platform to be able to elevate this and to really let people know that we hear them and we see them, and I hope that they're empowered by this new legislation that we just passed.
Thank you. And what advice, I guess it's twofold, for somebody who is a survivor, is there advice you could give them? And then for other advocates in the community, how can they support people?
Yeah. I think the message definitely for our survivors is that we're here. We're always here to listen, that we believe everyone. We are 24/7, so they can call us anytime. They can text us. Of course, I have to, put on our phone number, 609-394-9000, so that everybody know that somebody is here for you to listen, and you're not alone.
And that's the same thing I say. We're here. And we are a 24/7 service. We make sure that whenever our phone rings and there's a victim survivor at a hospital or police station, we show up. And we need for the community to show up by being different, by getting education on what survivors go through, by not victim blaming, by being supportive if someone comes to them and say, hey, I'm a survivor, or I've been through this horrific thing. Don't say, what did you do? Right. Because there's nothing they did to deserve that. Right. So I encourage everyone to just be kind. Yes. Be kind.
Listening ear.
Yes.
I would say, again, just to be able to love who you are, you didn't do anything wrong, and to reach out and to continue to speak up so that we can help other people as well. I think this is an amazing unity that we have, but we want to make sure we give it out to everybody. And so we want to make sure everybody have these resources as well.
Thank you all. This is very impactful, and I so appreciate you, and I'm honored to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you or someone you know needs help, don't hesitate to reach out. Call the New Jersey statewide sexual violence hotline at 1-800-601-7200. Connect with Younity in Mercer County or visit rain.org. This new law is a big step forward, and it's not the final one. Survivors deserve justice, they deserve transparency, and they deserve our support. And if you're moved by what you heard today, get involved. Keep advocating. Keep pushing for policies that protect and uplift survivors. A heartfelt thank you to our guests for their courage, insight, and commitment, and to you, our listeners, for joining us in this important conversation. Thank you.